Welcome to voters, Brother Brown here. Pre-release is just a few days away, so you know what that means? A brand new pre-release guide video where we're going to go through some of the best cards you can pull to give you guys a better idea on how to build when you attend the event. Before we get started, I just want to remind you guys, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on great informative Digimon content just like this. So without further ado, let's just jump right in and get started. So I'd like to start these videos off with the Tamers. So starting off, we're going to go with Marcus. So Marcus is a 5 cost, so it's a little more expensive than what your typical Tamer would cost you, but I think his effect makes up for it. So first of all, he is a memory setter, which is always nice to make sure you don't get choked. And then he also has the effect on play. You may suspend this Tamer, and then when this Tamer becomes suspended, one of your opponent's Digimon gets minus 3000 DP for the turn. He also has a secondary effect. If you control a Greymon or an Agumon, you gain a memory as well. That is a route you can go, but I think it's a little too situational, that support, so I didn't add it in here, but it is something you might want to consider when you're building. Maybe if you pull multiples, you might see value in it, but I think just the memory setting as well as the DP reduction is more than enough to make this card worthwhile. Then after that, we have Thomas. Also a memory setter, which is always nice. There's actually 3 in this set, which is actually quite good. And he has the extra effect of when one of your Galgamon or Galgomons in this name attacks, you can suspend this Tamer to have both players draw a card. I mean, it kind of sucks that you're giving your opponent a draw, but in some cases, that's kind of playing around to your strategy because there are some cards in this set that take advantage of your opponent having a certain amount of cards in their hand. And plus, anything that just gets you to your cards and cycles through your deck is always welcomed. So we'll take it. Then the last memory setter of the Tamers is going to be Yoshiro. And Yoshiro's secondary effect is when one of your Digimon would digivolve into a card with vegetation, plant, or fairy in its traits, by suspending this Tamer, gain a memory. Now, there's not many noteworthy targets in this set that this effect can come up, but there are a few, and it's just nice to have. And again, any extra bonuses you can get off a memory setter is always welcomed. So definitely, if you pull it, something you'd want to play. So moving on to a more unique Tamer, we have Spencer Damon. And Spencer Damon has the effect, all turns, once per turn, when one of your yellow Digimon would become suspended, one of your opponent's Digimon gets minus 1000 DP for the end of the turn. So kind of nice. You could potentially delete a weaker Digimon, or just make something a little weaker so it's more likely to either get killed in security or not be able to get over your blockers. And then he has a nice end of your turn effect. If you have a total of 6 cards or less in both players' security, you can treat this Tamer as a 3000 DP Digimon that has blocker until the end of your opponent's turn. So kind of nice to give you a little bit extra protection without having to cost an actual Digimon slot or playing anything extra, and it's just always recurring, so kind of nice. I like it. Then we have Richard Sampson, another really interesting card. So when this card is trashed from your security by an effect, you may play this card without paying the memory cost. Now, there are a couple cards in this set that we will go over that will trash your own security for added effects, so this can potentially come up from that, and you can just get a free Tamer on board, which is always nice. Then he has a nice effect at the start of main phase. If there is a total of 6 or less cards in both players' security stack, you just gain 1 memory. We'll always take memory gains. And then as for a main effect, if there are also 6 or total cards or less in both players' security, by suspending this Tamer, one of your Kunamons may digivolve into a Kentasauramon in your hand, ignoring the level cost by paying its memory cost. So this is a great way to cheat out a very powerful level 6, and we will go over it later, but I think overall this is a pretty powerful Tamer nonetheless. And last, to wrap up the Tamers, we have Keenan. So Keenan has the effect of on play, your opponent may trash a Tamer or option card from their hand, and if they don't, you gain a memory and draw a card. So this is kind of nice to either potentially get rid of something they're holding on to, like maybe a Tamer they didn't have a chance to set up, or potentially a removal option. But if not, that's not bad either, because you're getting a draw essentially for just 2 memory and setting up a Tamer, which is always very nice. And then it has the bonus effect of, on your opponent's turn, when a Digimon is played by an effect, you may suspend this Tamer to gain 1 memory. So this can kind of put a damper on your opponent's game plan, because there are a few cards that just allow you to play a Digimon off by an effect, and even some of your own cards as well. So this could potentially really help you in trying to shorten your opponent's turn. And it's also really nice because you would also get this if it's played off security, so potentially be a nice little security bomb to try to end your opponent's turn earlier than what they would hope. So starting off with the level 3 rookie Digimon, we have Galgamon. Galgamon has the effect when attacking, once per turn, both players draw the top card of their deck. Kind of sucks, again, you're giving your opponent a draw, but anything that cycles through your deck is always worth playing. And this card also has a nice inheritable. While your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand, this Digimon gains 1000 DP. So there's also value of giving your opponent extra cards in their hand because you're getting some added effects, and there's a few more cards we'll go over where this is going to become relevant. Next up, we have Kamimon. This is a 3-cost blocker. Blockers are always nice. It's always nice to keep yourself in the game, and there are quite a few in this set, and we will go over them. Following that, we have Kunemon. So Kunemon has the effect on play. You can reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. You can add 1 yellow Digimon card with vaccine in its traits, and 1 yellow tamer among them, and then place the rest at the bottom of your deck. So as you've seen previously, there's about 3 different yellow tamers you can get, so already 3 different targets you can choose from. Plus, a lot of the yellows in this set are already yellow and vaccine, so there are quite a few targets. So I think this could be a very viable card you can play, and also especially if you pull the Kenasuramon as well as the Richard Sampson, you can of course go for that combo to cheat it out. So it is kind of nice. It also has a nice inheritable when attacking once per turn. If there is a total of 6 or less cards in both players' security, one of your opponents gets minus 2000 DP. DP reduction is always nice to get over bodies and just make things weaker to make it easier to get rid of them. Next is Lilomon. So Lilomon has the effect, when a card is removed from your security, gain 1 memory. I don't think it'll come up too often, but it's not bad. It's nice to have something like this on this Digimon because, again, there are quite a few effects that do this. But he also has the same inheritable as the Kunemon, so these can kind of stack with each other, get more DP reduction. It's nice. I think more or less if you're going to play this card, it's more or less for the inheritable. So up next we have Pawn Chessmon. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the Chessmon line. They all have this on deletion effect. If it's deleted, you can play another one out of your hand for free, and then you get an added play cost if there's more of them in trash. I feel like this effect's a little too specific in a sealed environment, so you're not really guaranteed to pull a whole bunch of them to really make it worthwhile to be a cohesive strategy. But the reason why we have this on this list is because of its inheritable. Reboot is quite powerful in this kind of format, so you can swing without having to worry about if it does survive, that it can end up getting swung over the previous turn of your opponent's turn. It will restand itself, and it's safe from getting swung over. The other thing that really sucks about this card is it's a 1 cost on a level 2, which it kind of sucks starting off, potentially giving your opponent the turn just because you have to Digivolve on top of for 1, but not bad as something to hard play for 3, just for this inheritable alone, so I see the value in that. Next up we have the Black Pawn Chessmon. Kind of the same deal with the White Chessmon and this Chessmon. Funny enough, if you're playing both, you can actually proc the effect, which is kind of funny, but the reason why we have this card on here is because it's also a blocker. And again, as I said before, blockers are always welcome addition to your decks. Up next, another blocker, we have Engoramon. You can see we're not even past the level 3s yet. We've already gone to 3 blockers, which is kind of crazy, a very blocker heavy format. So on top of it being a blocker, it has the nice inheritable of all turns. If your opponent has no unsuspended Digimon in play, it just gains an extra 1000 DP. So again, just making your Digimon a little more beefier. Then we have Salamon. So Salamon has on play, you can reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 Digimon with Beast, Animal, or Sovereign other than Sea Animal from its traits, and 1 card of Royal Knights from your hand, and then you place the rest at the bottom. There are actually quite a few targets with this, not because it isn't color specific. You can also grab some yellow cards because some of them do state that they're holy beasts, so this can also get them to your hand as well. And there are quite a few Royal Knights in their traits in this set, so this is a great way to get to your top end. And it has the inheritable Whilst Digimon has Animal, Beast, or Sovereign, or Royal Knights in its traits, it gets an extra 2000 DP. So to make your big Royal Knight stacks a little more beefier, this guy can come up and it can be really handy. Then we got Gatsumon, another blocker, but this guy also has a little bonus effect. On deletion, if it's your opponent's turn, you'll be able to top 3 cards of your deck, and then you could add 1 black card from among them to your hand. So I think this could potentially come up quite a bit. There are quite a few very useful black Digimon in here. And again, this is a blocker that just does a little more. To wrap up our level 3s, we have Feshkomon. So on deletion, you draw 1, then you trash 1 from your hand. So again, cycling. And then as an inheritable, which is quite nice because this is always proc, at the end of your opponent's turn, once per turn, draw 1, then trash 1. So you can just constantly just keep cycling cards, and just trying to see your bigger pieces, your bigger stacks. Very nice stuff. So moving on to the level 4 champions, we have Aquilamon. So Aquilamon has the effect on play or when digivolving. You can delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 3000 DP or less. Great way to get rid of some of those cheap blockers that we talked about. And there's a way to kind of get him out of sources or play him out by an effect so he can get that effect off for free without having to pay the hefty 5 cost for the on play effect. And then he has, as an inheritable on deletion, draw a card. Cycling. It's good. Next up, we have Guapamon. And Guapamon, another blocker. And as for level 4, he's pretty cheap at 4 costs, so he can potentially be something to hard play and then let you be able to build up into your bigger stacks at a really cheap cost and trying to skip a step going from your level 3s and up. Tesla Jelly, he has the effect of, when attacking, draw a card. And an inheritable, when attacking, you can trash the bottom Digivolution card of one of your opponent's Digimon. So potentially can ruin some stacks and ruin some of your opponent's inheritables. Up next, we have Leomon. Leomon has the effect of, when attacking, by trashing the top card of your security stack, one of your opponent's Digimon gets minus 4000 DP for the turn. So again, more deletion. This is also a great tool in order to manipulate security for some of those effects that we discussed earlier with the Tamers and other cards alike. And it also has the inheritable like the other rookies, so if both players have a security cards is 6 or less, one of your opponent's Digimon gets minus 2000 DP for the turn. So again, more reduction, more deletion. Next, we got Micamon. And Micamon has the effect on play. One of your Digimon gains Piercer. And piercing is really nice to try to get things off. It is a 4 cost, so it's a little expensive. Sometimes you might not have the memory to do it, but again, there are ways to cheat out cards like this, so you're able to play this out for free and get that piercing off. And then has the same inheritable as the Salamon, so gives one of your animals or beasts or sovereigns or your Royal Knights an extra 2000 DP. Then we have the cheapest level 4, the hard play, the Platinum Shukamon. At 3 costs, this is as cheap as a rookie. Very nice to kind of just turbo out your higher stacks. But not only is he a low cost, he also kind of has his own value in itself. So on deletion, you can de-digivolve one of your opponent's Digimon. So this is a nice way to kind of ruin stacks as well and kind of get rid of problematic stuff. You can just get this guy out, swing into something, it dies, and then you can just de-digivolve and ruin an opponent's stack. Next up, what I think is going to be an MVP for the pre-release this weekend is going to be Gladimon. So first he has jamming, which is always nice to make sure you can swing and not have to worry about getting deleted in security. But he also has the reboot inheritable. And what's nice about that, this combination in particular, is you can bring this guy out, swing in without having to fear to get deleted, and then if you need to digivolve on top of it with a level 3, it's going to be able to unsuspend and make sure that it's not susceptible to getting deleted by battle on your opponent's turn. It could be a very powerful combo and be really annoying for your opponent to try to deal with this stack. If you see it, you're going to want to play it. You're going to want to play it probably in multiples. So it's going to win games. Porcupamon. I might have butchered that name, but we're just going to go with it. So he has the effect of on play or on deletion. You can delete one of your opponent's level 3 Digimon. Again, clearing bodies is always good. He's also very cheap at 4 cost. And he has the same inheritable as the other purple rookie that we talk about. The end of your opponent's turn, draw 1, trash 1, more cycling. I think it's a very good card, more or less for deletion rather than the inheritable, but the inheritable is just an extra plus. Peckmon. Pekmon is a blocker. Again, blockers are nice. And as an inheritable, on deletion, if this card was deleted other than by battle, your opponent has to trash a card from their hand. So if your opponent deals with it in any way with some sort of option, or maybe something like the Aquilomon to pop it if they need to try to get into your security, they're going to lose a card out of their hand. That can be very annoying. I really like this card, but I think there are some better options you could play, but it's something you can consider in case, you know, some of your other pulls aren't so great. Okamimon, on play, just draw a card. For a level 4, it gives you a draw. I mean, you can just hard play this, not have a Digivolve, and still get that extra draw for cycling. His on deletion effect is not going to matter because there is no way at all you're ever going to want to play Yeldercell in your babies because that's going to lock you up from Digivolving, so you definitely don't want to do it. But for a 4 cost to play, level 4, that gives you a draw, it's really nice. It also has a nice little bonus of being an X antibody, and if you do pull the Alphamon, this will be able to be utilized with its effect, which we will go over Alphamon later, but I think this is a very solid level 4. Now we're moving on to the level 5s. We're going to start things off with Shijirimon. So again, moving on with the theme of this video so far, again, we got a blocker, but this does more. So on an opponent's turn, if your opponent's Digimon attacks, you can play 1 level 4 or lower Digimon from this card's evolution sources. And this is not once per turn. So the more your opponent is swinging, the more stuff you're just bringing out of your sources. And this can build a very wide board very quickly and put a lot of pressure on your opponent. So this card is fantastic. I really like it. I think it's one of the better level 5s in this set. This is one of the ways you can get out those Digimon to get those on-play effects, like the Micamon, like the Aquilomon, and just get more value out of it. Very, very powerful stuff. Gargamon. When attacking, if your opponent has 8 or more cards in their hand, the target of this Digimon's attack can't be switched. So the more they draw, the more cards they have in hand. This card's basically unblockable because you can just swing in and not have to worry about having to be stopped. This could be a game ender. It's a very nice top end to have. And then he has a nice inheritable of when an effect adds a card to your opponent's hand, you can just unsuspend this Digimon. So with the right cards on field, you can proc this even yourself with something like a Galgamon on board. You can swing, get a draw, or your Tamers that can also get you a draw. You can get a lot of damage out of a card like this. Chirinamon. And Chirinamon has the new barrier mechanic. If I were to compare it to something, it's kind of similar to how Jammer works. So when this Digimon would be deleted in battle, by trashing the top card of the security, you can prevent that deletion. What you can essentially do is go in for security, and let's say something gets hit in there that would delete it. If it's higher than 7,000 DP, you can declare barrier, trash your top security, so that way it survives. You can also use this as a way to kind of be able to swing without having fear of your opponent swinging over it if you're planning to build into your level 6, because then if they attack into it, you can declare your barrier effect, trash your security, and then keep the body alive. And it's not once per turn, so they can multiple swings. You can keep trashing your security. Of course, with an effect like this, you got to be wary. Obviously, you could potentially put yourself in a very dangerous, lethal position. Something to be wary about. And then it has the inheritable. On deletion, you can just play a Kunamon from your hand or trash, suspend it without paying the memory cost. That can also potentially get you just an extra body out for free and put on the added pressure for your opponent. Louder Leomon. Again, he has barrier as well as barrier as an inheritable. So this can potentially get you your big stacks, that same kind of barrier protection, so your opponent's not going to be able to swing over it. Like, unless they have some sort of option or effect to deal with your big stack, they're not going to be able to get through this. So that's why he's on this list. Very nice protection tool. Mahirimon. So he has the effect on play. You can suspend one of your opponent's Digimon with 7,000 DP or less. Then one of your opponent's Digimon can't unsuspend until the end of your opponent's turn. So again, this can be used off of certain cards in the game. I mean, I know this is a level 5, so it's not going to work with the Shijirimon because that is also level 5, but there are some high-end cards that can play this out of sources, so stay tuned for that. But even playing off something for 7, this could be some way to maybe stun their stack and maybe keep you in the game if you're running behind and they have lethal. And then The inheritable I don't think is really going to come up very much, but your turn once per turn, when this Digimon would Digivolve, you can reduce the evolution cost by 1. So Lilamon. So Lilamon has deck is when Digivolving, you can play one Yoshiro from your hand for free. If you pull the Yoshiro, you can use this in combination with this to try to cheat it out for free and just have a free memory setter without having to pay. That's not the reason why I think this card is very valuable to play. I like it more or less because of its inheritable. So when your opponent has a suspended Digimon in play, this Digimon gets security attack +1. So this is a way to put the pressure on your opponent. You can obviously have certain effects that can suspend it for them, but they got to be wary doing those little pokes and keeping things on board, because that could potentially get you the extra damage you need to potentially secure lethal. So I like it just specifically for that. Lamortmon. This is another card where the main effect of it, it's not really going to come up because there is no Ruli in this set. But again, I think its inheritable makes up for the lack that the main effect doesn't have much value. So, your turn. When this Digimon would delete your opponent's Digimon in battle, trash the top card of your opponent's security. Trashing is always better than actually just taking a check, because none of the options are going to trigger. None of their Tamers, except for, of course, the Richard that we talked about before. But again, this is just another way to just get really powerful aggression. And can also really pair nicely with the Micamon, because getting piercing as well as a trash means that's double damage. So very, very powerful stuff. King Shukamon. This is the cheapest level 5 in this set at a 6 cost to hard play. So with a memory center on board, you can just slap this thing down and pass it over to your opponent to 3. You're not giving them very much, and then you're pretty much off the races to go into your big stacks. His effect can potentially also come up, surprisingly enough. Not very likely, but there is a way you can use it. So when attacking, you can play a level 4 or lower Digimon with Shukamon in its name from your hand without playing the cost. So if you have a Platinum Shukamon in your hand, when you attack, you can just play it out for free and just get another body. Is it going to come up very much? Probably not. But again, having something cheap that does more is always valuable in these kind of formats. And then to wrap up the level 5s, we're going to end things with Jurimon. So Jurimon is a blocker. The inheritable is very nice. So on your opponent's turn, when one of your Digimon becomes suspended, trash the top card of your opponent's security stack. So if they proc it with their own suspension effects, this card's gonna proc. If you block with something like any of your little blockers or anything like that, this is gonna proc it also. They're gonna trash your security. So again, just another way to kind of stunt your opponent and have to make them play around this effect. It's just gonna add that extra layer of pressure. So now moving on to the level 6s, which is probably the best part of BT-13. There are a lot of them, more so than other these lists that we've covered before. I think if you pull any of these guys and get them on board, you're looking in a very good position to win your games. A lot of powerful cards to talk about, so let's just dive into it. Starting off, we got Jesmon. So he has on play or when digivolving, you choose any number of your opponent's Digimon whose total DP add up to 6,000 or less and delete them. But for every other Digimon you have in play, you can add an extra 2,000 DP to the max that you can choose from for this effect. So the wider your board is, the more stuff you can delete and the bigger bodies you can get rid of. You can even make an argument in some cases on playing it is not even the worst thing, because just being able to potentially wipe out a board could potentially put you in a spot where you can just win just off that. It also has a nice little bonus effect of all your Digimon will get 1,000 DP for every Digimon with Sistermon in its name or Royal Knights in its traits. So there is no Sistermons in this set, unfortunately, but pretty much every high-end monster is a Royal Knight. And of course, this also counts Jesmon, so all your Digimon off the bat with this guy on board are going to get an extra 1,000 DP. Really nice to make your guys a little more beefier. Mirage Galgamon, he has Evade, which Evade can be nice to kind of protect yourself from any sort of deletion effect, or if your opponent's going to bounce you back to your hand. There are a few cards that do that, but that's not why you really want to play Mirage Galgamon. The reason why is he has a nice when digivolving effect. You can turn one of your opponent's Tamers to their hand, so that could potentially mess them up get rid of their memory setter, so then they have to spend a turn resetting it, and you could potentially choke them in that matter. And then it has the added bonus of having all turns once per turn. When an effect adds a card to your opponent's hand, you can play a Thomas out of your hand for free. So this is a great way to set up that Thomas as well if you haven't already got it out on board. And yeah, I think it's just very, very powerful. So up next, we have, in my opinion, probably the best level 6 that you can pull for this pre-release event. I think if you get this guy, you're going to be looking very, very good. And that's going to be Digimon. And what's nice about this guy is not only his really powerful effect, but also the fact that he's uncommon. So it is very easy to get this guy. He's not a rare, he's not a super rare. This is something that is very likely to come up in your pulls. So what does he do? Well, he is 5 cost to Digivolve, so he is a little expensive, but with a memory timer on board, you're not going to be missing out on too much. Even if you do pass it over to your opponent's turn, it's just going to be 2 memory, but that's not a whole lot. So first off, he is a blocker, and at 13 KDP, not a lot gets over him. He also has the added bonus of opponent's turn. When one of your opponent's attacks, you may play a level 5 or lower Digimon card from this card's digital source without paying the memory. So it's just like the Shinjurimon. The only thing is it's an extra level up. So this can actually combo with the Mihirimon that we talked about earlier to play out and suspend something and stop a potential other attack, and also be able to kind of cheat out your other level 6s by getting that level 5 out on board. And there's so many other on-play effects that this guy comes out. It's not once per turn. It's just such a powerful, fantastic card. If you pull it, run it. I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Bancho Leomon. First, he has blocker. And then, when Digivolving, by trashing the top card of your security stack, one of your opponent's Digimon gets minus 6,000 DP for the turn. So that's nice. And then all turns, when a card is removed from your opponent's security stack, you can play a yellow Tamer from your hand without paying the memory cost. You can get Marcus, Richard, or Spencer out of your hand onto the field for free with this effect. It's quite nice. The added DP reduction can potentially delete something, a blocker. It's a jack of all trades. It's a solid card. Kentutarosmon. This card is what you're going to be using in conjunction with your Richard and your Kunamon to cheat out if you do pull. I think he's powerful enough to warrant even if you don't have that as an option. So either on player when Digivolving, if the total number of both player security is 6 or less, you gain 3 memory and reveal 1 card in your hand. If that is a yellow card, you can place it on top of your security face down. If not, return it to the hand. If your memory is set up like that in a late game scenario, I think that's very possible. You're Digivolving a level 6 for only 2 memory. That's very, very powerful. And potentially recovering something to the top of your security can also help. He also has the added effect of, when attacking, you can trash the top card of your security stack to unsuspend this Digimon, and one of your opponent's Digimon gets minus 7,000 DP, so you can get even more damage out of this guy and potentially delete something as well. It's a very powerful card. It is an SR, so it's a little harder to pull, but it's definitely a game changer. Moving on with the Royal Knight train, we have Leopardmon. So Leopardmon has the effect of, when Digivolving, once per turn, you may play a green Digimon card or a Digimon with Royal Knights in its traits from your hand, paying the cost, but when you would play a card by this effect, it gets reduced by a cost of 4. So this is the way you want to abuse the Mikemon, because when you play it, it's a 4 cost already, but if it's reduced by 4, it's 0. Then you can give your Leopardmon piercing, which is kind of nice. But he also has an added effect of, all turns, when you play another Digimon, all your Digimon with Royal Knight in their traits and your green Digimon gain blocker. This is another way to just create a massive wall that your opponent will have to deal with. I think more or less what makes him good is just being able to play out something like a Royal Knight. You can make something a little cheaper, or play a green to just get those powerful inheritables off, like the Mikemon or like the Mihirimon that we talked about before, to get that out at a cheaper rate. So Rosemon. So Rosemon has the effect of, when Digivolving, by suspending one of your opponent's Digimon or Tamers, unsuspend this Digimon. This is a great way to put something in a vulnerable position that you need to get over, and this can also be very utilized with the inheritables such as like Lamortmon to get that trash in. Then it has all turns, once per turn. When an opponent's Digimon or Tamer becomes suspended, you can suspend one of your opponent's Digimon or Tamers. So you're suspending two things right off the bat just by playing this guy out. She's very, very powerful. Nice way to get some even more aggression out. A fan favorite of the Royal Knights, we have Alphamon. He has the effect of either on play or when digivolving by placing one Digimon card with the X antibody or Royal Knights traits from your trash underneath this Digimon as the bottom evolution. Until the end of your opponent's turn, your opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 10 or more cannot attack. Remember when I said before, the Okanimon is an X antibody, so you can put that underneath from the trash, or any of your other Royal Knights that you trashed earlier on. Maybe they got hit from security or anything like that. You can put under to proc this thing's effect, and being able to freeze and pretty much an entire board of your opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 10 or more. I mean, that's a pretty high ceiling. The only things that really can break that is the high up top stacks. So this can potentially keep you in the game with this effect like this. He also has an added effect, all turns, once per turn. When this Digimon would leave the battle area by an effect, by placing one card with X antibody or Royal Knights from his traits from this Digimon's Digivolution cards to the bottom deck, you can prevent it from leaving the field. So if they have any sort of removal, this guy is protected just by its own effect. Now, to make this guy a little bit easier, there are some other cards you could play that I didn't touch upon because I don't think they're very valuable. But stuff like Darulamon, he's not the worst thing you can play because he is a cheap cost level 4 at a 4 cost, and he's also X antibody, so this can work inside with that. So if you do pull the Alphamon, he is an SR, so it's not the most likely thing, but that's something you might want to consider when you're building. So Craniamon, he is a big blocker at 13k, but he also has a nice when digivolving effect. This Digimon isn't affected by your opponent's Digimon until the end of your opponent's turn. So this thing is unaffected by any effect whatsoever. This is like one of the biggest shields you could potentially get on board. On top of that, end of your opponent's turn, you may choose one of your opponent's Digimon, and that Digimon must attack. So you can force something to attack, and then you can block and just get rid of it. This is very nice, also in conjunction with something like the Jurymon that we talked about before, that when your opponent Digimon is suspended, you can then trash the top card of your opponent's security. So it's a nice little neat combo you can do with this card. Lord Nightmon. She has the effect of on player when digivolving, you return one card with Lucamon in his name or the Royal Knights traits from your trash to your hand. So it's a nice way to recycle some of your Royal Knights that you have in trash. Then she has the added bonus of having on your opponent's turn, once per turn, when an opponent's Digimon attacks, for each of your Digimon with Royal Knights and their traits in play, you gain one memory. So this is another nice little trick to try to shorten your opponent's turn and pass it back over to you. So that could potentially come up, and the more bigger bodies you have on board with Royal Knights, the more memory they're going to give you. So that's going to make it really easy to kind of choke your opponent out from potentially trying to game you. You can tell there is a lot of defensive cards in this set. Finally, we have the big boy himself for the level 6s, Belphmon Rage Mode. Now you might be looking at that evolution cost at 6 and go, are you crazy? That is a lot of memory to be paying for something like this, but trust me, it is worth it. So he has a very powerful start of main phase effect. Delete all your opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon. And if you have 6 or less cards in your hand, this Digimon gets 3000 DP and security attack +1 for the turn. So there are ways to manipulate your hand a little bit with some of the purple cards in this set. Sometimes this might come up, but what's more important is just deleting all your opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon. You could potentially put them in a very tight spot by just having this out. Means if they don't have a level 6 on board, by the start of your turn, it's all going, just getting deleted. So very, very powerful. And if that wasn't enough, he has an end of attack effect. By deleting one of your other Digimon, you can unsuspend this Digimon. So you can delete something else that's weaker on board and then be able to unsuspend and go in for more damage. I wouldn't worry too much being inheritable because I don't think you'd want to play both on sleep mode. Don't worry too much about the inheritable, but yes, this start of main phase effect is so powerful. That 6 cost to Digivolve is just worth it. Then of course we have the option section. Now, like all pre-releases, option cards are some of the harder cards to get out of your hand just because you need to control the color still in order to activate them, but there are a few pretty powerful ones that you might want to consider playing. Starting off with, of course, Full Moon Meteor Impact. So at 8 costs, it is a little hefty, but its effect's very nice. Return one of your opponent's Digimon to its owner's hand. Then, for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand, gain 1 memory. So if your opponent has 8 cards in hand, which again, you can manipulate that with all the Galgamon support, this card is costing only 6. If they have 4 cards in hand, it's costing you 7. That's the same price as a Coyote's Breath, and it does literally the exact same thing. So this is just a nice tool to get rid of any problematic Digimon you want out of your hand. And it does the same thing if it's hit security. You just return a card to your opponent's hand. Very powerful removal option. Then following that, we have Icy Breath. Now, Icy Breath has a very nice effect of when this card is trashed from the security stack, you can still activate it. So this can potentially even be procced off of your own trashing effects like Barrier, or like your, when attacking, you could trash something to minus DP. So this thing is gonna proc no matter what if it's in security. So its effect, main 1 of your opponent's Digimon gets minus 3000 DP until the end of their turn. Then, if there is a total of 6 or less cards in both players' security stacks, all your opponent's Digimon gain minus security attack until the end of your opponent's turn. So this is just a nice way to kind of blanket secure yourself from getting any damage in. It's pretty cheap at only a 5 cost. And being yellow, there is a lot of yellow Tamers. So this, out of all the options, I really do believe this is the most likely to be live most of the time in your hand. I think this is one of the best options you can play. If you see it in your pools, put it in. It's gonna be a game changer. Then the last one I want to touch up on is gonna be Vulcan Crusher. I'm not too keen on this card, but it does have some good applications. It is the cheapest out of all the options we came up at 4 cost. So you can choose one of your Digimon, return one of your opponent's suspended Digimon with a DP equal or less than the chosen Digimon's DP. So if you have something like a big level 6 with a very high DP, you can pretty much return any of your opponent's suspended Digimon to their hand. So that's kind of nice. Then it has the added effect, but I don't think this is ever going to come up because I really don't see the benefit of playing the Leopard mode of Leopardmon. But by returning the top card of your Leomon Leopard mode to your hand, you can unsuspend all of your Digimon. That could be very powerful. However, I don't think it's worth running the Leopard mode if you do pull it, because it's very specific, needing the Leopardmon to Digivolve on top of to really get the best value out of. And then as a security effect, you can just suspend a Digimon your opponent controls and then add it to your hand. So another way to stop yourself from getting hit for lethal. So next up in this section, we have a few cards that are a little bit of an honorable mention. So this is some stuff you may want to consider if you do pull. So starting off, we're going to talk about the new burst modes. This is kind of a new mechanic that there's being added to the game where you can Digivolve these guys for 0 by returning the corresponding Tamer, and you're Digivolving on top of the corresponding level 6. Rosemon is the first one we want to talk about. This one has the effect of when Digivolving, suspend one of your opponent's Digimon and one of their Tamers. All of your opponent's Digimon and Tamers don't unsuspend the turn until the end of their turn. So this is a nice way again to stun some of your stuff. And then it has the effect when attacking, For every 2 suspended Digimon or Tamers your opponent has in play, you can trash the top card of your opponent's security stack. You can get a lot of damage in if they have a lot of suspended cards on board. It is a little tougher because it is a level 7, it is an SR, and it's kind of going to be a little dependent on if you have the Yoshiro as well as the Rosemon, if you want to get the maximum benefit of it. But I think it still has enough value and it's such a powerful effect that it's something you might want to consider if you do pull. I think the absolute best of the burst modes is going to be the Mirage Galgamon. So same idea, the only difference is you can burst Digivolve into it by using a Mirage Galgamon and returning a Tamers. But this thing's effect has, when Digivolving, you can return one of your opponent's Digimon to its owner's hand. Then, for every 4 cards in your opponent's hand, you gain a memory. So if they have 8, you're getting 2. If they have anything more than that, you can just gain more. You're basically gaining memory. If you burst Evo this, it's gonna cost you nothing to Digivolve, and you're just gonna be gaining more from it. Then it has, when attacking, if your opponent has 9 or more cards in their hand, by placing cards from your opponent's hand at the bottom of the owner's deck without looking until there's 8 left, you can unsuspend this Digimon. So this is a nice way to potentially kind of rip some cards out of your opponent's hand, maybe get lucky and hit some of their important pieces that they need, and then unsuspending, allowing you to swing again. That's very powerful. So I do see a lot of value in potentially playing this, but again, I think to maximize the value of it, I think you really want to have a Mirage Galgamon and a Tamers. That's why it wasn't in the main list. Then we have Examon. So Examon being a level 7, level 7s are a little harder to get out, of course, because you'd have to Digivolve on top of level 6. But this also has the nice benefit of being a Digimon you can DNA Digivolve into. And now DNA Digivolving in pre-release also works like any other normal evolution. You don't have to have the specific colors in order to DNA Digivolve. So if you just have 2 level 6 on board, you can just DNA into this, have it unsuspend, and then you can go for another swing. So that's very powerful. But its effect's actually not bad either. When Digivolving, you can suspend one of your opponent's Digimon. That Digimon does not unsuspend. So again, this is just another way to kind of stun your opponent's board. Then it has a once per turn all turns. When your opponent's Digimon becomes suspended, you may activate one of these effects. You can suspend one of your opponent's Digimon, or you can unsuspend this Digimon. So you can even potentially get even more damage out of this guy. I think he's something you might want to consider. These next 2 mentions are probably the hardest to pull. That's why they're on the honorable mentions, because it's a secret rare. So the likelihood of you pulling this out of 6 packs is not very high, but if you do see it, I think you could definitely want to consider it. So we have Gallantmon. So Gallantmon has a very powerful late game effect. So when you would play this Digimon from your hand, if you do not have a Digimon in play, you can reduce the play cost by 2 for every 5 total cards in both players' trash. The later the game goes on, the cheaper this card's gonna cost you. And there's ways you can potentially fuel this. There are quite a few purple cards, like the Rookie that we discussed, or that Champion that lets you draw one and trash one. And then there's also a Tamer that we didn't touch upon. I believe his name was Akihiro, which also has a similar effect of being able to draw and trash at the end of, I think it's your opponent's turn. So that's a way to facilitate it. In addition to that, he gets Rush. So this could potentially be a game ender if you have the memory to just slap it down with that reduced cost and be able to swing in for a game. And he has an added effect of on play or when Digivolving or when attacking. So anything with this guy, you're gonna get this effect. Delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 6,000 DP or less, but if no Digimon was deleted by this effect, you can delete one of your Digimon with 3,000 DP or more instead. So either way, this thing's deleting something. So this is very powerful. Again, it's very hard to pull this thing because it is a secret, but there's no really downside to this card other than it's a level 6. But I think if you have it, if you get lucky, you want to play it. And then the last for the honorable mentions is going to be the granddaddy of them all, the Omnimon. The reason why you'd want to play this, again, it's a secret, very hard to pull, but the only reason is the first line of the text, on player 1 Digivolving, you may delete one of your opponent's Digimon. It doesn't care if it's a level, doesn't care what DP it has, or anything like that, you just straight up delete it. And that's pretty nice for just being able to Digivolve for 4 costs on your level 6. That's quite powerful. I would more or less ignore the rest of it because it's a little more specific to the Royal Knight archetype, and I don't think that's going to be a viable option in the sealed format, but if you do pull it, this could be a way to just have an added bit of removal in your deck. So that's going to do it for the list, guys. Like always, when it comes to pre-release, it's all about having fun. Maybe there's some cards and interactions I glossed over. Just have fun with it, try out different things, try to experiment. Maybe you'll find some cool combos that I didn't see, but at the end of the day, guys, I hope this list helped out. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, please remember to hit that like button, spread the good word by sharing the video, and most importantly, become a devotee by subscribing. Until next time, take care.